Ride with JMV on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
The man in the box sounds a little bit like JMV today. I've heard that before. Thankfully for John, he doesn't look like me. The substitute teacher, you normally hear me during the show that leads up to this one. However, I am thrilled that my good friend JMV, because I do call him John, because we're friends in real life, not just on the radio. When there was a window of time when I was technically his boss, dude would never take a day off. I like the fact that during the course of the summer, he's actually sneaking in some Mondays and Tuesdays off to recharge the batteries a bit. So hello, how are you? My name is Greg Rakestraw, and I will be your tour guide between now and 6 o'clock here on 93.5 and 107.5, The Fan. This is always a very unique time of year because we're just kind of running out of things to talk about locally before it all starts blowing up once again. From tomorrow, we are 7 days out from the start of Indianapolis Colts training camp. And I've been doing this long enough now where things are always cyclical. The pattern always tends to be the same. We get to the first week of training camp and go, here we go, Colts training camp. Get about a weekend, we go, kind of need something else to talk about. And then we have preseason games a week after, and then it just kind of ramps up until we get to the start of the high school football season, college football season, NFL, and then we get into, again, a familiar pattern, but a very busy one for the remainder of the year. The NBA Summer League gets our attention, for a couple of days. And the Indiana Pacers look great when they played guys that already knew they were going to be on the roster. And then after that stopped, after Benedict Mathurin and Isaiah Jackson and Andrew Nembhard all stopped playing, well, the Indiana Pacers lost their last 3 summer games, and nobody cares. It's a summer league. And now, at least until there is maybe a potential other player move made by the Pacers between now and the start of training camp, we kind of put the Pacers off to the side. If something were to change in terms of their roster or personnel, then they go right back to the front of the line. Well, then, all right, what are we going to talk about? Well, in the interim, we've talked a little about the Cincinnati Reds, talked a lot about the Cincinnati Reds, because a lot of the guys that happen to sit in this chair, myself are included, grew up as big-time Cincinnati Reds fans. And, John can vividly remember the Big Red Machine winning back-to-back World Series championships. I was born 4 months, or I guess maybe 2 months, actually, after they won the last one of those two. So I heard about him, didn't experience him. Obviously, I was around for 1990, but it's been 33 years since I got to experience that. And man, we were all gung-ho, guns a-blazing for the month of June and into early July. Well, Milwaukee Brewers may have doused a bit of a damper on our Reds party after coming in Cincinnati and sweeping them and then shutting them out in the first 2 games of the weekend and going back to before the All-Star break, having taken 5 of 6. So maybe our Reds are falling back to earth just a little bit, although they're apparently another player transaction. Another talented young player is making his way up. But maybe we talk a little bit less about the Reds because we've talked a lot about them a lot over the course of the last 4 or 5 weeks, and maybe that takes a little bit of a backseat now. I was prepared, being the former, and let me emphasize that word, former tennis player that I used to be, and someone passionate about the sport, not as much now as, again, I used to be. I was like, all right, great, we can have the Novak Djokovic conversation about the greatest of all time. Well, then Carlos Alcaraz gets in the way and again, it's a good thing for tennis that there is a next generation, or at least one player of that generation, that seemingly is ready to take the mantle, because it has been the Federer, Nadal, Djokovic story almost for the last 20 years at this point. And while it is rare that in a sport you can go like the 3 best players to ever play the game, were playing simultaneously. And that is the case. Those three dudes are the GOATs. Like, the only other male tennis player you could argue is in that conversation is probably Rod Laver. Because Laver won a slam in the AM era in 62, then couldn't play in those events because he turned pro. As soon as that got opened up to the pros, he won another one in 69. And so because of the great unknown as to what might have been, you can put him in there. But kind of compare the way he was as an athlete compared to what the guys are now, they're playing a totally different sport. But I was like, all right, we can have this greatest of all time conversation about Novak Djokovic. And frankly, I think he is, or is going to rack up the titles where he will be by the time he hangs him up. But he didn't win yesterday. So I'm not going to talk as much about that maybe as I had planned on in the program. Well, here are the things we are going to talk about today on the show. Obviously, our focus in terms of INDYCAR on this radio station tends to be heavily in the month of May. And then we are your place that you can find races, but maybe we don't talk about it all that much other than, say, trackside every Tuesday night, or in last week's case, Wednesday night because of the All-Star Game here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Well, I tend to be an INDYCAR nerd. Now, I'll admit to you, didn't watch yesterday's race. It was kind of twofold. I had baseball all weekend long with the ISC Sports Network. I was kind of locked in on calling like 8 games over the course of 2 days. But I also would not have seen yesterday's race because yesterday was the Peacock exclusive race. And this is not my way of being old man that yells at clouds and goes, I can't believe you didn't put this on over-the-air terrestrial television. I think the IndyCar series actually is a really good television deal. Like, almost all of their races air on NBC. Most of the races that don't air on USA. This is the one kind of streaming exclusive. At the same time, there is kind of a certain limit as to how many streaming packages or plans you are going to have. Whether it is ESPN Plus, check. Paramount Plus, check. ISC Sports Network, go ahead and check that box at iscsportsnetwork.com. It's worth your $4.99 a month, by God. But there comes a certain point like, hey, I'm kind of tapped out in terms of the extra content I am willing to buy. For whatever reason, I have kind of drawn that line at Peacock. So I wasn't going to watch that race anyway. However, Alex Palou didn't win it. That seems to be like a news story that is worthy of talking about on the show, in any IndyCar conversation, because Palou's been on a heater, one that we haven't seen in a series that is known for its parody in quite some time. Well, it wasn't Alex's day yesterday. It was Christian Luundgard's day yesterday. And again, I'll make the reference point to, we tend to, in Indianapolis, for even, I think, some more of the diehard IndyCar fans, but especially those that are casual IndyCar fans, that they get fired up for the race in the month of May. They, think occasionally about the race. Hey, is it on tonight? Great. Am I listening to it on the Fan? Am I watching it on NBC? At least are cognizant of the results. You remember the struggles that Rahal, Letterman, Lannigan had in terms of finding speed for the 500. You forget that Christian Luundgard was on the pole for the race before, as in the Grand Prix to kick off the month. And he's had some solid results since that time, but still it is a win. And he will be joining us coming up at about 3:45. One thing you can do to pass the time, because the sun never sets on the basketball season in the state of Indiana, you can go check out Great Hoops at a couple of different locations for the rest of this month and early into August. I am on the airwaves twice this week, filling in for John today, obviously until 6 o'clock. I'll get my turn at the Fan Midday Show coming up on Wednesday afternoon. And I tend to have a relationship with both of the different organizers of some great summer pickup leagues, pro-ams action, where you can see guys that are playing in the league, currently playing college basketball, guys that play overseas, etc. There's the City League downtown, and there's the Dizzy Runs Pro-Am up at Mojo Up Fieldhouse up in Noblesville on the northeast side. So today, we'll try to get Kyle Guy on the program. He is slated to join us at 4 o'clock. Looking forward to catching up with him. I had the pleasure of broadcasting that event's championship game last year and scheduled to do it again this year, coming up on Friday, August the 4th. So Kyle Guy will join us coming up a little bit after 4. That league is now, I want to say, 2 weeks in, if not 3, to their schedule. And again, their championship is August 4th, so we'll talk to Kyle about that, see if he's going back to Spain for another year and playing, but just generally catching up. I'm sure there's some Bengals conversation. He's a big-time Bengals fan, would be warranted. We'll talk with him coming up a little bit later on in the program, too. I mentioned Christian Luundgard, a little more IndyCar with Nick Yeoman, late in the 4 o'clock hour. But the other thing that you know to expect from me is a little soccer conversation. And probably some high school sports in there as well. And trust me, I'll get to that off the very top of the program coming up here in just a couple of moments. But obviously, you know me as the voice of the Indy 11. That carries over for both the men and the women. The men's team was off this weekend. They are back in action Saturday night against Tampa Bay Rowdies. To me, it is the women's team that takes the center stage this week. Very fittingly, as a Women's World Cup begins on Thursday in Australia and New Zealand. The Indy 11 women play in the W League. That would be the second highest rated league in this country as of now, because there is one professional league, the NWSL. I want to say the NWSL currently has 12 teams, closest one in Chicago, one in Louisville. There is a second professional league that will launch next year, the USL Super League. The Indy 11 plans to have a team playing in that in 2025 when 11 Park is done, as I point over my right shoulder just down the street. But the W League is a league that has former pros playing, aspiring pros playing, and current collegiate players. Indy 11 have played in that league the last 2 years. Last year, they reached the league quarterfinals. They were beaten by the eventual league runners-up. Well, the Indy 11 women have won 3 playoff matches. And on Friday night, they beat a very good team out of San Francisco 3-2 in front of a packed house indoors at Grand Park. And they will now get to host the W League championship match. The last 2 teams out of 65 that played in the league this year will meet at Carroll Stadium on Saturday afternoon. And the Indy 11 are offering you a whale of a deal. 1 ticket gets you 2 matches. If you want to stay there and kind of tailgate and camp out between games, you can do that. In other words, you only pay to park 1 time. 2 o'clock women's championship against the North Carolina Courage, their U23 Academy team, against the Indy 11. And there is some remarkable symmetry here because the first ever match in the history of the Indy 11 came against the, you want to say sister team, but maybe the brother team would be the right. That doesn't sound right either. The component men's team, there you go, from North Carolina, which was at the time known as the Carolina Railhawks. And now the women's teams will play each other for a league championship. I get to have the call of both games. I am very fortunate that I get this really unique doubleheader coming up on Saturday. Women's match at 2, men's match at 7. Frankly, I will talk more about the women's match this week when I have this platform because I think it's more unique. I think it's more special. The men are kind of an average team right now in the middle of their season. The women have a chance to bring home a trophy, and they are doing it largely with players, not exclusively, but largely that are from this area, like people that played their high school soccer at places like Carmel and Triton Central and Delta and Zionsville and Noblesville, or played college soccer at Purdue or Butler or Xavier, or played, whatever the case may be. You get the point. There's a lot of ladies that either have played professionally or are aspiring to play professionally, but most of them are from here. And so I'm going to use kind of the platform that I've got to talk about this. It's not going to be something I'm talking about for 3 hours on the program, but you're going to get a segment of it both today as well as on Wednesday. That segment today will be the next segment of the show. Grace Bahr has been a big part of the Indy 11 women's success over the last couple of years. Kind enough to join me about 30 minutes before training hits coming up at 4 o'clock. Grace will join us in the next segment of the show. So, guest at 3:30, 3:45, 4 o'clock, and 4:45. If you want to interact with me, 317-239-1070. Email the program, greg@1070thefan.com. You can always tweet to me as well, at Greg Rakestraw. And I'm like terrible about like checking the comments in the lounge. Like John quasi lives there during the course of the show. I always say I'm going to check, and I don't. Probably because I don't want to see like my picture back on YouTube, like staring at me as I'm talking. That strikes me as kind of weird. So I say I'll check it. I probably won't. So Twitter, email, and telephone calls are the way to go. And the entirety of the 5 o'clock hour will be you and me, and we'll figure something out from a conversation point and standard to have. The other thing that I feel compelled to talk about off the very top of the show is a sporting event that I did on Friday night. And it's one of these things that because of how it ended, there has been far more conversation about the game than there would have been had it played out under normal circumstances. So on Friday night, I did the North-South All-Star Game, the IFCA North-South All-Star Classic. It is the annual high school football game that pits some of the best high school players in the state, mostly the guys that will play from, say, the FCS level on down. So if you've got a big-time recruit that's going to Indiana, Purdue, Iowa, Notre Dame, that kid's not playing in the game. But if the kid's going to play at Indiana State, potentially Ball State, UIndy, Marion, Wabash, DePaul, Franklin, etc., and community colleges, places like that outside of Indiana, those kids, a good chance, are going to play in the game. There's an equal mixture of kids from all of 10 different regions around the state. There's an equal mixture of kids that play in 1A football through 6A football, but there's really good players, a lot of kids that played for state championships, etc., etc. And I have been doing this game maybe every year for 14, 15 years. We didn't have one in 2020. I think if I went back and looked, I have probably done that game every year it's been played from probably about 2007 on. The game ended with 4 minutes left to go because the game was called by the referee because of a series of unsportsmanlike penalties, because of a series of dust-ups. There were not fights, there were not fracases, but there were kind of collision points that were happening. Something that was atypical for that game as someone that's been around it for 20 years. And obviously that became the much bigger story other than the South won the game by a score of 21-2. The story became, hey, this All-Star Showcase was ended with 4 minutes left to go. As soon as that decision was made, I just kind of dropped my head because I knew that is the only thing that will be talked about that game. Because normally, game's over. Hey, this was a great send-off for these kids. For most of them on to the college football. For a handful of them, this is the last time they were put on the pads. Thank you, good night. And then we do it again, 52 weeks later, and the game kind of comes back into our consciousness, for a week, kind of on the high school sports landscape. And I had several people that either called me or texted me, said, hey, tell me about what happened. And so the way that I've described it is this. It's probably not as bad as you heard. It's still not good. The fact that the officials felt compelled to even think about ending that game early tells you that there's going to be a little more scrutiny maybe on who is selected, how guys conduct themselves for this event going forward. This is an event that has gone on for decades. And the caliber of play can kind of be up and down at times. But what it really is, I jokingly call it like the summer family reunion of Indiana high school football. A, there was 5,500 people that were in attendance at that game that were at Decatur Central on Friday night. B, I had the pleasure of broadcasting it. We streamed it on ISC. We actually had a television partner in WHME in South Bend that was providing coverage for the game. And so there's interest in it. But really what it is, it's kind of a chance for everybody that works in high school football as a coach, as an official, whatever the case may be, we all kind of see each other every July. And it's one of those situations like, all right, you kind of know, all right, we're a couple of weeks out from the high school football season starting in terms of practice. We're 5 weeks out from the start of the high school football season in terms of games. This kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth. Now, I don't say this to be over dramatic. They're not going to not play the game going forward, all right? It's not to that point where we're going to stop playing the game. You always get some social media keyboard warriors that take things a bit too far. I think it's more embarrassing than anything else. I think there might be a little more of a stricter review of who's playing in the game and how things like that get handled. And I was on the field. I was obviously in the press box. Maybe the step of ending the game might have gotten a little bit too far. But I'll be the first to tell you, and I said this a couple of times in the broadcast, I've never seen the game that chippy before. I mean, there was a player ejected in the first half for some of the actions that he had. Maybe it was simply the heat and humidity on the turf that night that caused everybody's blood to boil a little bit. And again, if this is done during a different time of year, maybe there's a little less attention going on, but because it is one of the rare times where there's not much going on in sports, all of a sudden, this kind of comes to the forefront. So if someone wants to talk about it with me on the show today, I'm happy to do it. I'll talk about the good of high school sports. I'll talk about the bad as well. Was this embarrassing? Yes. Was this a full-on brawl? Not even close. Not even close to anything like that. But knowing I've been a voice that's associated with that specific event, I'm lucky enough to be considered one of the voices of high school football in this state, and knowing I had this platform here today, I figured I would talk about it right off the jump of the show. Embarrassing? Yes. Do you maybe change a handful of things going forward? Yes. Was it the end of the world? No. Just embarrassing. It's kind of like one of those moments where, your parent would say, I'm not mad at you, I'm just disappointed. That's kind of what I think the proper emotional connotation involved with what happened on Friday night should be. So there you go. If there's something that you want to talk about that I haven't brought up, at Greg Rakestraw on Twitter, Greg at 1070thefan.com is the email, 317-239-1070 is the telephone number. Women's soccer in segment 2. I guarantee JMV's probably never done that before on the show, but I will next on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Should have saved this when we have Kristen Airy on the show. Like, he and Hootie are boys. Absolutely. Darius Rucker and Kristen Airy have become friends over the years. You have hit my age demographic, by the way, since Cracked Rear View blew up when I was a freshman in college. Greg Rakestraw in for JMV. See, James is normally used to JMV being the DJ over here and yelling like Q during breaks so we can pick out exactly what song he wants to play. When the substitute teacher is here, James has to guess, okay, what music do I think the host likes? But what James doesn't know is like, I do like the non-radio thing, and I like talk up. I mean, I hear a sound and I talk about it. So I will like converse about the music that gets played, during the course of the show. 317-239-1070, but I will handle the heavy lifting for the next couple of segments of the show. From a play-by-play standpoint this week, I get to kick back a little bit. And for as much as I love what I do for a living, A, the pipes could use the break, but B, I'm saving up my energy for a soccer doubleheader coming up on Saturday afternoon. The men play the Tampa Bay Rowdies at 7, but the Indy 11 women will play for a W League championship. Few will have a better seat than me. I would consider being one of the starting center backs having a better seat than me, except that she won't have a seat at all. She'll be, hoofing it up and down, putting miles on the tires. That would be Grace Bahr, who joins us now, getting ready to complete her second year with the Indy 11 with hopefully a league championship. Grace, thanks for the time before practice. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fine, and obviously you probably recognized from the early going last year, this was pretty special in terms of the operation and the opportunity here. But to now be playing for a championship this week, just kind of your immediate thought to knowing you've got a potential title on your hands 5 days from now.
Yeah, I think, one, it's amazing to have put ourselves in this position to play in the championship. And what's even better is that we get to host and have it at home with as many fans as we can bring in. I mentioned it after the game, the semifinals last week. We have a 12th man with our atmosphere and our community, so we're really excited. We got one more win to go, so in 5 days, that's the goal.
Friday night was one of the rare times I could not be there at Grand Park to watch you guys in action. So, A, thanks for getting another game so I could call the final. I greatly appreciate that. But B, what the atmosphere sounded great as I went back and watched the match on Saturday morning. What was it like from a player standpoint?
Yeah, I think it was amazing as a player. There were a lot of goals in that game, and no matter whose goal it was, we always had the support. So I think that was incredible. It definitely proves some difficulty sometimes when we're trying to get attention from our coach or in between each other. I think I screamed Sam Dewey's name about 5 times before she heard me, but it's all an amazing appreciation because we would not be where we are without the support that we have.
I'll try to quickly explain your background. Played collegiately at both Xavier and Wisconsin. You went to camp with Racing Louisville in the NWSL in 2021. So for a lot of players in this league, this is kind of what you do in the summer to get yourself ready for the upcoming season. For a handful of players, it's, hey, I want to try to, get to a professional level. What's the goal that you have in terms of playing for the Indy 11? What do you think your soccer future is going to entail for you at this point?
Yeah, I think I'm in an interesting phase because I come back and I play, and I prove to myself more than anybody else that I can still put in the minutes, I can still put in the miles, and I still have that love and passion for the game. So I think for me, my sights are set on the Super League. When the stadium's ready, when Indy's ready to put their stamp on professional women's soccer, I think I'm still going to be ready to lace up my boots and see what I can contribute.
So many players, are hoping to say, take this and go play overseas. Or as you well know, you've got teammates that have played overseas and now are back here, working full-time and then kind of playing on the side. Is the European route something that interests you, or do you want to stay here in the States?
I was in Europe.
Yep.
I missed the first game of this year, and that is because I was pursuing an opportunity overseas in Denmark. So the culture and the experience of traveling to Europe, it does interest me, but I think there's a lot to offer that people aren't quite aware of unless you're on this Indy team. So I'm ready to stay here and pursue that, but Soccer definitely still has my heart and my goals right now.
Again, Grace Bahr joining us. She's been one of the 2-year members of the Indy 11. She was actually a player assistant coach for the team last year, focusing her skills in terms of playing this year for the squad. Joining us, Greg Rakestraw filling in for JMV on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. How has Indy been to you? Because, again, you're from, around the Midwest, but not kind of one of the Indy-based players like so many. Has this kind of become like your adopted hometown the last couple of years?
Yeah, it's been great. I moved here by myself a little over a year ago, and the community, the people, the groups that I've got myself into have been incredibly welcoming. I think the Midwest is home to me wherever it is, so it's been great to have a home base here in Indy and consider this a new era for where I live and grow in this phase of my life.
All right, so with that, you're going to go from the great indoors to playing outdoors. And I'll be honest, Grace, I have not looked at what the forecast kind of entails for Saturday afternoon. I would imagine that turf is going to be warm at 2 o'clock on Saturday. What's going to be like for you and your teammates making the transition from outdoor to indoor coming up this weekend?
Yeah, I think we've had the luxury to train outdoors most of the year, except for when we choose to train indoors to prep for games. So we have a good practice schedule of preparation ahead of us to get used to that. But, I mean, there's nothing going to compare to the adrenaline. And like you said, I'm sure the turf is definitely going to give us some heat. So I think for us, it's just focusing on what we can control and suffering through what the weather might be on the hopes of winning a championship.
All right, obviously you're kind of focused on your own championship, but as I said off the top of the show, it's fitting that I'm going to talk more women's soccer this week on this radio station because the Women's World Cup, is like less than 72 hours away from starting. How big of a topic of conversation is that amongst you and your teammates as you train for one more week this season?
Yeah, I think we talk about it briefly. I think I talk about it more than most because I played with Rose Lavelle at Wisconsin. Her family and my family are really good friends. So my support lies through and through with her and the team. So they might be sick of me talking about it, but I will talk about it until they win the World Cup as well. So it's been great. We're really looking forward to it.
All right. So this is going to be remedial for some. But just to explain, Rose Lavelle is one of the top American players, and there's only, I think, 9 that have previous World Cup experience. Clearly, she has some. I'll lean on you for some inside knowledge. They kind of held her out of that last friendly. Injury-wise, she going to be okay for the World Cup?
Oh, yeah. She's set. She's ready. Rose is an amazing player. She knows how to control her body, and she has a group of people around her that support that. So she's ready to go, and I'm all for her scoring some more goals, hopefully in the World Cup final to win gold again, but along the way as well.
All right, so I'm going to let you kind of act as your own PR agent here in terms of for the team. Obviously, when you and I have had conversations in the past, it's been largely for our soccer audience on Soccer Saturday. But this is a much broader group that is listening here. What are the reasons why someone should come and watch you and your teammates play for a championship on Saturday afternoon? What do you want them to see when you're playing at Carroll Stadium coming up on Saturday?
Yeah, I think for everybody, it's a great experience just to be surrounded by a group of people cheering for a common cause. So families, relatives, kids, parents, I think the atmosphere provides an opportunity for everybody to have fun. And then for those who want to watch a competitive match and see people come together in such a short amount of time, I think it'll be less than 3 months in total. We're a really special group of girls from age 15 to age 28 who are going to all be fighting for each other and for a great cause to win championships. So I think outside of soccer, it's just an electric atmosphere. And then if you're looking for that soccer-specific area, I mean, we're ready to play. We're going to get down and dirty if we have to. We'll play pretty soccer if we have to as well, but our eyes are set on winning that championship. You
got that left foot dialed in the free kick if needed you had earlier this year?
Yeah, I'm saving another one for this occasion, hopefully.
That was a beauty that you had, I think, on Father's Day, if I remember right, when you put that one upper 90 on the right side. I know you've got training coming up, so I know you're busy. Grace, thanks for the time. I'll see you Saturday at the mic. Take care.
Thank you so much.
You got it. Grace Bahr of the Indy 11 kind enough to join us. I think I'll have another player join the midday show when I am doing that coming up on Wednesday. Again, 317-685-1100 if you want tickets. Indy11.com. And again, one ticket will get you into both matches on Saturday. You can pay once to park, and as long as you leave your car there, you don't have to pay a second time. 2 matches for the price of one, and one may get you a championship. Indy11.com has more information. We'll take this quick timeout. When we come back, I'm not sure if Christian Luundgard will compete for an IndyCar championship this year, but it does have an IndyCar victory from yesterday on the streets of Toronto, and he will join us next. It's Greg Rakestraw filling in for JMV. It's The Ride on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. he is getting a very well-deserved day off. He is back in the saddle tomorrow. My name is Greg Rakestraw, and again, we are in the, I wouldn't say the mid-July doldrums, but, I'm not one that just tries to, dig up the same old things when there's simply nothing going on. The Indiana Pacers Summer League is now over. We were all infatuated with it last week when, the top players were playing, but after winning their first 2 games, they lost their last 3, and no, the sky is not falling. It's the Summer League. They're done with it, and so now we kind of play the waiting game for the Pacers. Is there one more roster move or big trade remaining, or is this largely the core of players they are going to have going to training camp in October? Obviously, we are on the eve of the Indianapolis Colts going to training camp, as in a week from now. And frankly, you don't want to hear Colts news this time of year. I'm sure you want to talk about it, but you don't want to hear kind of like new news. In other words, usually you hear something about a player on your team before training camp starts, it's not good news. But we can have a Colts conversation if you'd like. But obviously, with again, it kind of being one of those rare downtimes, it allows us to expand the palette, so to speak. And something that you hear on these airwaves, all year long due to trackside. And, of course, for 17 races, because us being the home of the IndyCar series, you get to hear us talking about all things IndyCar. Well, we have a first-time winner that is getting ready to join us now, because yesterday he was the fastest around Exhibition Place on the streets of Toronto. And now I don't think I have ever gotten to ask this question as a first question to a guest, as Christian Luundgard joins us. Christian, have you officially shaved the mustache at this point?
Hi, and yes. The mustache got taken off in the plane yesterday, which was pretty special. And also the most special part of that was I made this what I call a stupid deal with my best friend in December last year, and we shook hands on it and we agreed on it. And then after the fact, I told him that the first race was in March, so we had to live with it up until then at least. And he was there to share the moment with me, so it made it extra special for sure. Obviously, you are glad the mustache is gone because of what it means. You got that race win. But had you grown to appreciate the mustache, or did you look at yourself in the mirror every day and go, my goodness, you're a dope? Why did you make that bet? I mean, it was more, actually, he had a mustache about a month before that, and when I saw him, I told him to get rid of it, and then, as stupid as I am, we spent that 1 month, and then I asked him if we should make this bet, and we agreed on it, and it was there, and now it's gone, and obviously, like you mentioned, for the reason why it's gone is because of the first win. And now we're going into a part of the season where I know we have more opportunities, so I might need to grow it back out.
I say you get a streak, you don't mess with a streak. You got to leave. If you keep winning, the mustache has to stay off. Obviously, exactly. you have been close. It's been 3 seasons, really only 2 calendar years since you first made the jump to be here in August of 2021. What was the difference yesterday? In other words, what were the hurdles you were able to overcome that for whatever reason maybe you didn't in previous races when you had the opportunity?
I think, we had a very, very fast car. We proved it in qualifying, even under the mixed and tricky conditions we had with rain in the middle of qualifying, the track drying up, and we were fast in Group 1. I think we were second or third in the first part of qualifying, and I got transferred into Fast 6, and once the track dried up, we knew that we had to go on slicks and give it everything we got. Kind of the mentality was the worst thing that can happen is that we're going to start 6th. So obviously getting the pole, we had our brilliant strategy to try to pull away early in the race to just pull that gap and make the race easier for us later on, which it ended up doing. And I do believe we had one of the fastest car, if not the fastest car on the track yesterday. You're
7th right now in the points. As I quickly just do, a scan through the standings, in 10 races, you have finished, in the top 10 in 6 of those events. So do you view it as, hey, I've had a successful year? Because again, I talked about how crazy the prism is of looking at everything through the Indy 500 when it was such a struggle for speed for you and for Jack and for Graham. So is that just the Indy bias of the series? Do you look at it and say, hey, 2023 has been really good for us? Kind of your thoughts on that?
I think I touched base on this about a week ago in some interviews where they asked me, and honestly, I do think we've had a very strong season. If you exclude the Oval performance that we've had this year, and perhaps even Long Beach and Detroit, I think those weekends are outstanders in terms of, I think, the performance we've had lately. And I think we're making progress. I mean, last year we didn't win a race. Now we've won Toronto, and we're only going to come back stronger. We're going into Iowa next weekend, driving the Hy-V car, the Hy-V event. We're the previous race winner, and we have the first box because we're on pole. So, we're going in there with absolutely the most pressure possible. But we're going to go out there and give it everything we have.
It's one thing to go oval racing, which is obviously a primarily, American, interest in motorsport. The Bullring short track oval, kind of the only time you really kind of do anything like this. I mean, St. Louis is obviously almost double the size of Iowa. What was it like for you to adapt to that for the first time last year in the Iowa weekend of 2022?
I enjoy Iowa. It's a fun little track. It's very bumpy. It's tricky. We tested there earlier this season, and we were competitive. I think the Andretti cars will be strong. We know the Penske's will be strong as well. But we did have some pace, and I matched my lap time from last year, basically on my first run on the track, and we ended up having some car issues that basically ruined the rest of our afternoon, so we didn't get to run. So we missed half a day at the test. But the other two cars were running strong and making improvements. So going in there, I think we can be quite confident. I've gained a lot of confidence on the ovals compared to last year. So, and considering where we are in the standings and the momentum we're carrying right now, I do think that we can do something good. I'm not going to say that we're going to go out and win the race, because that's I know Joseph and Pato will definitely be tough opponents to beat, but we're going in with the momentum that they don't have right now, so I hope that will be on our side as well.
There are always sponsored obligations. It's part of what you do as a racer. It allows you to do what you do from a passion standpoint. But you touched on it. You're driving the Hy-V car at an event that exists back at the Iowa Speedway because of Hy-V's involvement with the series. So I guess just what does that make it even kind of more unique, what that race weekend is for you coming up?
I mean, I've got everything laid up for me. Going into that weekend, now leaving from a race win, driving the Hy-V car at the Hy-V event, and on top of that, it's actually my birthday on the Sunday of the weekend. So it's definitely my weekend by the sound of it. So we hope we'll just have a clear race weekend. No small incidents or failures or any small problems that will hold us back. But right now in the championship, we're carrying momentum. And from my perspective, it's kind of me and Alex Pelou that has been carrying the best momentum lately. So we know where he is in the championship and how well he's been performing. So if we can carry that momentum throughout the rest of the season, I don't think we'll catch him, but I definitely think we can get close to where he is right now.
Christian Luundgard, our guest, race winner yesterday in Toronto, kind enough to join us day after on the ride. Greg Rakestraw in for JMV, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Again, being the sponsorship car of the event has its perks. Do you get to go up on stage with Carrie Underwood, Kenny Chesney, Zach Brown, Ed Sheeran, who are all scheduled to appear coming up this weekend in Iowa?
Not that I'm aware of at the moment, but I'm sure there's things right now that I don't know of that I most likely have to do. But, I go in with full expectations of having to do stuff that I don't know of right now and go in with just pure enjoyment. We're going off a race win, and everything Hy-V is doing for our team, for me and for the series. We want to give back to them as well. So, whatever they want me to do, I'll be right there.
Well, also, you can do it without a mustache, which is a big part of the fun of it as well. We're now 23 months removed from you first making the jump over to the States to run for Rahal, Letterman, Lannigan Racing. Has the experience, has it been everything you thought it would be and more? Is this kind of what you thought it would be going into it? Just overall, you're about to hit the 2-year mark of riding in the IndyCar Series full-time or driving in the IndyCar Series full-time. What has it been like? What has been kind of the biggest surprise or development on that front in your estimation?
Honestly, I think the biggest change I believe that I have made is just experience, understanding the circuits, understanding especially the ovals, pure confidence. We've started every weekend faster than we did last year, just from a confidence point of view, and now knowing all the circuits and et cetera. And the team has done well preparing me from last year to this year, and even preparing the team itself. And obviously it helps that we're making improvements. But honestly, it's just being race smart. It's understanding how the races work out. This weekend was a great example of, yes, we're in the lead of the race. We come out as 7th under the last caution pit stop circle, and understanding where you are in the real race, because we had 3 cars ahead of us that needed to pit. We had 3 cars ahead of us that pitted 5 laps earlier, and we were short on fuel. So, just understanding these kind of things is things that I never thought of last year, and I just have more awareness of everything around me, and I think that has made a huge difference.
Well, again, we're all now aware you're a race winner, no longer a mustache wearer, and also because of this conversation, I know to wish you a happy early birthday, and I hope for your sake the success of this Sunday is repeated this coming Sunday. You can celebrate a race win on your 22nd birthday. Christian, I know you're busy. I appreciate your time. Congrats on win number 1. Hope it's the first of many, and many safe trips around the Oval at Iowa this weekend. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much.
You got it. Christian Luundgard, kind enough to join us again, the driver, the number Hy-Vee 45. And thanks to Kathy Lauterbach and the folks from Rahal, Letterman, Lannigan Racing for making that possible. 2 races this weekend in Iowa. You can hear them both right here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. We'll take this quick time out. Women's soccer and IndyCar. Not often a combination you hear in terms of talk radio. We'll get back to basketball. There you go. Kyle Guy will be joining us next. It's Greg Rakestraw in for JMV, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. 2 hours left to go. Greg Rakestraw, I sound like JMV. I think I could do the JMV takeover on Saturday nights. I would not do it with the musical knowledge nor the passion that won JMV. What I felt bad. I had a song lined up for him to play, and then I kind of got busy. I never got to call. I called the show at 8:30 on Saturday night, and he didn't answer. He was busy and never called back. So that was less Primus you got to hear, apparently, on B1057 than you were intended to. I'll try to restart my streak on Saturday. We go from one guest to another. I'll be seeing him coming up on August the 4th, as in a Friday night for the championship of the Dizzy Runs Pro-Am. He is part of the brain trust that puts together. He's also still one hell of a point guard. It is Kyle Guy that joins us now. KG, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
I'm doing good. What is this like being a part of this event the second year around after helping get it off the ground last summer?
Yeah, it's bigger and better, man. We just try to keep making improvements and getting better players, from around the country, but definitely with a focus on Indiana, we've been able to do that.
How active do you get in the recruiting process, or after you kind of put this together for the first year, does a lot of that kind of take care of itself?
The only easier part this year than last year is I already have everybody's numbers for the most part. But yeah, man, no, I'm 100% in the recruiting process. I do a lot of it myself, and I just think it's important, and so and I'm a little bit of a control freak too. So, and I'm trying to be super organized. So I'm always blowing these guys up, and thankfully they deal with me. So
why was this something that you always wanted to do? And I'm friends with Carlos Knox, who put one of these together. You go to a lot of major cities. There's always kind of a great league for guys that are playing professionally or have played in college or are playing in college now. Why was this so important to you?
Yeah, I just felt like, ever since the Carlos Knox one, there really hasn't been one. City League puts on a good one down at Tech, but I just felt like we could do bigger and better, and that's something I've always wanted to do. I have an AU program and more, so I'm always trying to give back, and I felt like Indianapolis is such a hotbed for basketball, but the pros don't when they come back, there's not this big NBA trainer or this big pro-am where they can get their work in, and so that's what we wanted to establish, and we've been able to do so.
All right, so you've had a mix of players. I remember Miles Colvin played in the championship game last year. He was getting ready to get into his high school senior year, and most of the guys are current college players, former local college players that play in Europe, and guys that are lucky enough to get to play in the NBA. But you had one of those upcoming high school players play last week, and I'm sure that garnered a lot of attention. What was it like seeing Flory Badunga out there on the floor last week for this?
Yeah, it was great, man. He is a man amongst boys, even at that level. Even playing with these pros, he's a special talent. He's coming back again tomorrow night, and we have our best week yet coming on Tuesday with full of players.
All right, so feel free to plug away here. Tease us up. Who are some of the? I know you can't name everybody. There's 60 dudes that are playing. Give me some of the headliners that are playing tomorrow night.
Yeah, so the high schoolers, I only let a select few high schoolers. So Flory's playing again. Braylon Mullins from Greenfield Central. Devon Hall from Tenley. Stevie Reynolds from up north in South Bend.
Yep.
And then college players will have Pierre Brooks from Butler. And then pros will have the Teague brothers. Will have, Andre Owens and Shane Whittington, who had a short stint with the Pacers. Myself, I always play. And then we have the next 2 weeks we'll have some Pacers players. I'm not going to say who. I think that the people need to come see for themselves. But we'll have some Pacers players the next 2 weeks on these next 2 Tuesdays. So, and then as you said, always overseas guys and pros that are from Indiana. Devontae Smith-Rivera, Indiana legend, he's playing. So a lot of guys.
And again, Mojo Up Fieldhouse up in Noblesville, off of Bowdoin Road, just north of 146th Street, exit 210. To go watch this again. Hooping tomorrow night. First game tomorrow night starts at what time?
6:30. We'll have 3 games at 6:30 going on at one time, and then we'll have the main premiere game with Pacers players and a couple other guys. That'll be at 7:45.
All right, very cool. So, again, we'll plug that again one more time before we let Kyle exit stage left. When you and I talked last year in the post-game show of the championship, You were literally getting ready to head over to Spain. What was your experience like with Juventud a year ago?
Yeah, man, it was great, honestly. I can't complain. I live just north of Barcelona, and I was a 10-minute walk from the beach. Played great in the best basketball league in the world outside of the NBA, domestically in Spain, and got to travel the world. Spent Christmas in Switzerland. Like, I don't have a whole lot to complain about, man. I'm super fortunate and had a pretty good season myself. So, all
right. Thankfully, a buddy of mine played for this team, so I can actually, I think, pronounce them somewhat properly. Panathinaikos is where you are heading to play in Greece. Why was that kind of the next stop in the world tour for you?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was just the best offer I could get. It was the best offer I could get in terms of everything, from money to playing time to living experience to everything. And they're a really good team with one of the best histories in Europe. And like I said, I like traveling the world, so Athens was the next place on the bucket list.
Is this something where, if and there are guys I could rattle off like Chandler Thompson, Kenny Barlow, the younger generation like David Logan. These are friends of mine that have, now done this 10, 15 years and played the entirety of their career in Europe. If that's the route that it goes for you, you okay with that?
Oh yeah, I'll never say no to the NBA, but I felt that I, did everything in my power and showcased that I can play at that level, and I believe that in my heart, and I think other people do too. So I'm content with that and knowing that it's out of my control. So I'm, just trying to secure my financial freedom for my son.
Again, Kyle Guy, kind enough to join us. Dizzy Runs Pro-Am. The next installment of it starts tomorrow night at 6:30 at Mojo Up Fieldhouse in Noblesville. Premier game is at 7:45. Championship game of this quick run comes up on Friday, August 4th. Kind enough to join us here on the ride without JMV. Greg Rakestraw filling in, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. When people see you out and about in Indianapolis, do they most often want to talk to you about the Pro-Am, about your days at Lawrence Central, or about winning a national championship at Virginia? What's the first thing that comes up in conversation?
It changes. It's just a good mix. I do think being back home, there's a lot of people that want to reminisce. And so we talk a lot about LC or Virginia. But with how big the Pro-Am's been getting, and my stint in the NBA, it just changes every time, man. I don't know how to explain it, man. I'm at Target right now. I just saw somebody. He dapped me up and wanted to talk about LC, so it just changes every time.
You're a popular guy. People recognize you in the community. Last time I saw you, by the way, the hair flow was majestic. Has it gotten even better since you were in Europe? Are you your summer buzz cut? What are the locks looking like right now?
Yeah, summer buzz cut, man. It was too much to keep up with, so I decided to cut it all off, and now we're rocking just a real normal cut.
Kyle, it's some of us are follically challenged, so we don't have the option. We kind of got to work what we have. So I wish I could have those options that you do with that. What was it like following your LC Bears and your Virginia Cavaliers and your Cincinnati Bengals? What was it like following them from overseas a year ago?
Well, it was difficult because I had to watch everything the next morning for the most part. And so I just wouldn't check my phone when I woke up in the morning, and then I rewatched the Bengals game or Virginia game or whatever. So, but it was fun. There's a little American bar over there in Barcelona called Coco Vale. I was there once or twice a week, getting some wings and, getting the taste of home.
I like it. All right. Now, so last year when we did the final of the Pro-Am on TV, you were like literally heading over to Spain the next week. When do you head back to Greece to start the next year?
Yeah, they haven't given me a date yet, but a little bit later, late August, maybe 1st of September. So it won't be as abrupt as last year.
Well, it's good to hear that you are doing well. I am happy your experience over there went so well. Best luck in Greece. If I don't see you beforehand, I'll see you on August the 4th. And thanks for the time today, buddy. I greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Anytime. Thank you.
You got it. Kyle Guy, kind enough to join us again. He is a big part of the effort behind the Dizzy Runs Pro-Am. So is Eric Shellhammer. So is Derek Grant. And thanks to DG, as he is better known, as I can call him kind of by the full name, But we, as an ISC, lucky enough to broadcast that championship game last year, certainly the plan coming up this year, and always appreciate catching up with Kyle on the program. With that, the phone lines are now open to you. The topics are now open to you. And again, basketball is always in session or in conversation here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Other two guests that we had on, again, we'll talk a little IndyCar, not a lot after the 500, but I'm certainly happy to do it with race winner Christian Luundgard. And then, like I said, when I'm on the program, you know the drill. We're going to talk a little more high school sports. We're going to talk a little more soccer. And so we had Bahr of the Indy 11 women on the program because they are playing for their league championship coming up on Saturday afternoon. So that's been kind of the topic so far. If anything of those interest you, feel free. Phone lines are available. Nothing but air and opportunity. 317-239-1070. Or you can interact with me on Twitter, kind of like these two listeners did earlier in the program. Now, one of them, you know, he hit me up on his Twitter handle, but you probably don't know him by name. You probably better know him as Cloney Dungy, given name as Mike Bostic. And he hits me up and goes, tennis talk. I like it. Well, it's Wimbledon, so we have a little tennis talk in the program. The other person that wanted to talk to me in terms of yapping about yapping about soccer is Chris on Twitter, when he said, it'd be awesome if you could get Hi, My Name is Seton. That'd be Seton O'Connor of the Dan Patrick Show on the midday show on Wednesday. Seton's Twitter commentary on U.S. soccer is awesome and hilarious. Well, Chris, what you may not know is that Seton and I are actually like friends in real life, not only on television. And Seton was on Soccer Saturday about 3 weeks ago when the Indy 11 played Hartford, and Seton's son plays for the Hartford Athletic Academy. So he's legit. So, not that I don't have a problem getting Seton back on the program again. Maybe he's a little busy, you know, doing his own show from 9 until noon. But if you do want to hear Seton and I have a conversation about soccer, all you got to do is log on to the podcast page at 1075thefan.com, and you can go back and listen to the two of us have a conversation about the sport. But I appreciate the suggestion and the interest with that. Again, 317-239-1070, at Greg Rakestraw on Twitter. Email the program to greg@1070thefan.com. Briefly, the Indiana Pacers did finish their summer league yesterday and lost to the Pistons by a score of 100-85. Obviously, the guys that you knew were going to be on the roster that were the veterans meaning they've been with the Pacers for a year or two, once those guys stopped playing, the results tended to kind of fall off for the Pacers in terms of the summer league. And once you get to a certain point in the summer league, the thought is, hey, let's just make sure our guys stay healthy, and the Pacers are able to do that. Jarris Walker looked the part. He didn't play in the last game. Isaiah Wong is going to be on a two-way contract with the team, had 24 points in yesterday's game. Ben Shepherd, who will have a full-fledged rookie contract, he had 12 points in yesterday's game. But again, that is as quickly in the rearview mirror as you can make it. Now it is there another roster move coming? And last week the conversation was, is it Pascal Siakam? And I said, hey, I'd love to see him. I just don't think the Pacers actually have kind of the right piece to be able to get him back. I don't think what the Pacers could offer or would want to exchange would be tantalizing enough to get the Raptors to move on from him, even knowing he is entering a contract year. I saw another potential three-way deal that had been rumored, even though the site that I had seen it from said that the talks had stalled, but apparently the Pacers could have potentially ended up as part of a three-way deal with Evan Fournier coming to the Indiana Pacers. Just because of the number of contracts the Pacers have and the number of quality veteran players that I'm not sure there is going to be significant playing time for. Like, for example, we know Daniel Tice is a guy that would fit someplace else, and there's 4 guys for kind of 2 roster spots in terms of the actual playing rotation. Everybody fits in the roster. But in terms of actual run, Miles Turner is going to get 30-ish minutes a night, and one of Isaiah Jackson and Jalen Smith is going to get the other 17 or 18. And after that, somebody's going to be unhappy. And for the most part, one of those guys was Daniel Tice last year, who basically played for like a month, if that. And that was the end of it. And you would think the Pacers would be looking to ship him. Again, for as good as TJ McConnell has been, I still think the writing is on the wall with the amount of other guards they've got. He's probably the guy they are looking to deal to get a quality piece back and maybe even deal him almost as a thank you. Hey, thanks for being a consummate pro. Thanks for being a great teammate. Thanks for being a fan favorite. It's not fair to you if we're not going to play you. Let's move you someplace where you can help a contributing team, and he certainly can. He can help this team too. But again, in baseball, the tie goes to the runner. In this situation with the Pacers, the tie is going to go to kind of the young player in which you think there is a higher ceiling. You've got to find, obviously, Halliburton's your guy. You got to find minutes for Nembhard, the combination of the 1 and 2 position. Those minutes got to come from somebody. Whether that somebody is in part Buddy Hield, whether in some combination that somebody is McConnell. And so there's going to be, I think, another trade, another player move, but I'm not sure that happens immediately. Not sure that happens in September. That happens heading into training camp. Who knows? But I do think there is another subsequent Pacers move at some point in time in the near future. So when we talk about roster construction for the Pacers, feel free. If you cannot wait to talk about the Indianapolis Colts, training camp starts in 8 days. I am fortunate enough to be back for a 12th year of doing the postgame show. I am fortunate enough to be back for a 5th year of doing the preseason games on television, which probably means this here beard that those of you in the YouTube lounge are looking at right now, probably going by the wayside at some point in time, sooner rather than later. We can talk Colts. We can always talk Colts. That's kind of the promo that you hear. There is no offseason. The offseason is a season. Whatever that promo is, well, the offseason's about over. If you want to talk about the horseshoes, we can certainly do that as well. Open phone lines when we come back from this timeout. Nick Yeoman of INDYCAR Radio at the end of the hour, and then nothing but you and me from 5 o'clock on. 317-239-1070, at Greg Rakestraw on Twitter. Email the program, Greg at 1070thefan.com. We're back after this. And not that I have a problem with My Name is Mud. It was another Primus classic, though, that I was going to recommend to be on the program. Because who doesn't enjoy Winona's Big Brown Beaver? I mean, seriously, right? See, it works either way. But again, thank you for making the effort, James. I appreciate that. 317-239-1070 at Greg Rakestraw on Twitter. Email the show too. Greg at 1070thefan.com. I get this on Twitter from my buddy Aaron Pittman. Aaron, of course, a virtual announcer and a stadium voice that you hear at multiple locations in central Indiana. And he posts this. With the signing of new Titans receiver DeAndre Hopkins, he is the only person on the entire Titans roster to have more receiving touchdowns than head coach Mike Vrabel. Vrabel scored 12 in his career, while everyone else on the Titans had 8 or less. Oh, and by the way, Mike Vrabel played defense. Well done, Aaron. Well played by you. Yes, he was the short yardage fullback for a few years in Bill Belichick's schemes offensively in New England. But yes, it's true. And yes, DeAndre Hopkins has signed a 2-year deal with the Tennessee Titans. And yes, I think he makes them a better player. Although when they have tried to bring in veteran wide receiver talent in the past, it has not worked. Julio Jones immediately comes to mind. But, frankly, when they have signed veteran wide receiver talent, who else it hasn't worked for? Us here in Indianapolis. Andre Johnson as a Colt, ring a bell for anybody. So it happens too. And I am to a point with the Colts team, and maybe it shouldn't be saying I am to a point. It's the fact that I think the Colts as a team, because there are so many question marks, because there are so many young pieces, and I've said this before over the course of the airwaves on a variety of different things. Maybe it's because I spend so much time with coaches that, and I don't do it like when I think my team's going to be 13-4, but when I think they're going to be something short of that, I kind of bring all the focus back on the Colts. Like, do I expect the Colts to contend for division championship this year? No, I don't. Am I hopeful that maybe they're competing for a playoff spot at the end of the year? Yes, I do, because, again, to get a wild card spot, 9-10 wins can get you that, and let's hope this is a 500 or slightly better team. There's a chance it couldn't be. I mean, there are a lot of young, unproven pieces here, namely with the quarterback position. But I bring that up for this reason. I am so laser focused on, hey, let's worry about the Colts, what the Colts do well, that if I don't think my team is going to be contending for a division championship, I'm not as worried about what the Tennessee Titans are doing. Or I'm not as worried about what the Houston Texans are doing. The team that probably everybody should kind of lock in on is, what are the Jacksonville Jaguars doing? Because that's the upside down world we live in right now, is that the Jacksonville Jaguars are in the best position to win in the division. Titans probably second behind that. There's a reason why the Colts and the Texans were drafting where they were, back in April. And so I'm excited about the Colts. I'm excited to see what Anthony Richardson can do. But there's so many questions about this team that I'm not as concerned with the fact that the Titans brought in DeAndre Hopkins. I think it makes great sense for them because whatever reason, every franchise has their position that goes, man, that's our bugaboo. Clearly, that's the one for the Tennessee Titans. Does that make them a better team? Yes. Am I sure if that puts them over the hump in terms of, that makes them a playoff team? Yeah, I don't know. I think they got some question marks involved that as well. But thank you, Aaron. I got no problem sharing that on the program today. Michael is up next at 317-239-1070. Hello, Michael.
Hey, Rick. How you doing, sir? Hope you're having a great summer.
I'm good. What do you have for us, buddy?
Now, I won't keep you long, but I was just wondering, with high school football being around 32 days away, have you guys put the schedule together for your season yet?
I have put the schedule together for the season just yet, and Michael, thank you for the telephone call. I won't bore the listeners with reciting in week 1. We'll be going here. I know that my schedule for high school football starts with Fort Wayne Snyder and Warren Central. That is the game that I will have in week number 1. and I will have great games every week on ISC Sports Network, primarily focusing on Carmel and the Mick during the regular season. We expand that during the course of the postseason. And, Michael, it is always good to hear from you. Thank you very much for dialing in. 317-239-1070, at Greg Rakestraw on Twitter. Email the show to greg@1070thefan.com. One other thing that I wanted to share from a football standpoint, and I was going to share this because I found out about it that morning. For whatever reason, it kind of slipped my mind as the show was going on last Wednesday. I was here for the Fan Midday Show. And I've alluded to the fact that you will get the chance, or you're burdened, maybe is the way to say it, with hearing me talk about the Colts in the post-game show every Sunday afternoon, since we're playing like 1 o'clock kickoffs and largely nothing but for the entirety of the year. You'll hear me late Sunday afternoons, hopefully recapping more Colts victories than losses in the fall of 2023. And that this is going to be year 12 for me doing this. Well, it will be year 1 for me, though, without my partner in crime, Barry Krauss. Barry has decided to retire from being a part of the Colts Radio Network. And Barry has had a largely on, occasionally off relationship with the Colts dating back to 1979. Spent 5 years with the Baltimore Colts, 5 years with the Indianapolis Colts. Once his playing days was over, was briefly the analyst for Colts Radio in terms of in-game. Then has been a part of the Colts Radio Network much longer than I had been. He was the post-game show host when I was brought aboard in the spring of 2012. Barry has been living out of Indianapolis now for the last couple of years. He's been commuting in for games from Tennessee and has elected to say, you know what? That amount of time on the road and time of travel back and forth, I think I am ready to let that go by the wayside. Barry doesn't look it. Barry is in his mid-60s and deciding, you know what? I think a little less wear and tear, a little more time with the grandbabies is what I want to do the most. So Barry let us with the Indianapolis Colts know that effective as of last week. And I just want to say how much I have enjoyed my friendship with Barry, which long predates me doing the post-game show with him. Barry and I know each other for the better part of 25 years. And that friendship is not going to go away. I want a chance to see him as often. But like literally on the post-game show, like we've bought each other like Christmas presents the last 2 and 3 years. I mean, there is a genuine friendship that Barry and I have, that Bill Brooks and I have. And so while I am thrilled to continue to work with Bill, I will miss Barry terribly. So again, I wanted to make sure that while I had an open microphone to be able to talk about it, just wanted to say, Barry, I love you, and thanks for the friendship, which is not going away, and thanks for making my job in doing the radio for the Indianapolis Colts so easy and so fun for the last 11 years, and it will not be the same without you. Now, while I have legends on the brain, I will switch sports. And while I'm talking about a guy whose playing days ended 30 years ago in Barry Krauss, maybe the players I'm about to name, their playing days have all ended a little sooner or closer than that. I'll make the switch from talking about football to talking about baseball. James, what do the names Ken Griffey Jr., David Ortiz, Albert Pujols, and Jim Thome have in common?
Well, I know they're all baseball players.
They're all baseball players. They're all very good baseball players. They're not in the Hall of Fame all yet. They will be at some point in time. They also are all very much guys that could exit the building rather quickly in terms of one swing. You know what else they may have in common?
What's that?
There could be a Legends Home Run Derby.
Oh.
That could be coming up very soon.
Interesting.
Obviously, Ken Griffey Jr. was back in the spotlight last week with the All-Star Game being back in Seattle for the first time in a long time. And if you want to feel old, Ken Griffey Jr. is now 53 years old. The kid is 53. Those other guys would be in their 40s. Thome may be around 50 at this point. Then again, he and Junior a little further retired and removed from their careers than, say, Big Papi and Albert Pujols. Obviously, Pujols, as the SportsCenter commercial said, was the machine. And he played until, the end of last year, until he crossed the 700 home run plateau. Ortiz, just because I got this question around with a trivia question amongst a buddy of mine, I have this specifically. He retired 7 years ago. So he last played in 2016. If I hadn't brought that up in conversation with a friend of mine 2 days ago, believe me, I wouldn't have had that just, right off the top of my head and available for this conversation. But apparently, I saw this. I'm an Athletic subscriber, and I saw this email with a Jason Stark article attached to it, that the genesis of this obviously was the home run derby last weekend. And you are not asking these all-time greats, but former professional athletes, because they're all retired now, and, in the midsection start to look not completely like me, but a little bit more like I would these days. You're asking out there and run the bases. You're asking them to get out there and go, track down fly balls in the alleys or by the warning track. You're simply asking them to swing. And maybe you've got fewer rounds than you would of the home run derby. Maybe it's more of a one-time through competition, as after 5 minutes would be the sound you would hear on the microphone of the guys being mic'd up. But I'm not going to lie. I did not watch a single second of the home run derby. And again, that doesn't mean there's something wrong with the home run derby. I think I've kind of largely moved on from it. That's a me thing, not a baseball thing. But if you told me, hey, we're thinking about having a Legends home run derby, and you would, bring out guys more of this ilk, let's face it, let's get to the elephant in the room. Would you bring in Barry Bonds for this? Would you bring in Sammy Sosa for this? Would you bring in Martin? You get where I'm going with this in terms of the four names that I have given you seemingly don't get tied to PEDs like some of the other ones I just did. I'm not trying to open a can of worms with this, but do you bring back those guys that are still in some semblance of shape? Griffey's last year would have been I think 2009. So he's 14 years, I think. It's 14 years removed from his playing days. Tomei would be somewhere around that vicinity as to when he stopped playing. If you had a Legends home run derby, would you tune in? I would. I absolutely would. Because, again, that is of my generation, all right, of when I watch more baseball than I do now. Pujols played for so stinking long. He's of everyone's generation because he played for 22, 23 years. But would I donate whatever night it was to watch the Legends home run derby? I would. And apparently there's conversation about not just being water cooler conversation, but this actually taking place. I think I'd tune in for that. Maybe you would as well. 317-239-1070 is telephone number. At Greg Rakestraw on Twitter. Email the program to greg@1070thefan.com. You've already missed 3 guests on the show. They're all available on the podcast page at 1075thefan.com. Grace Bahr of the Indy 11 women. Christian Luundgard, a winner on the INDYCAR circuit for the first time and no longer the wearer of we can say it now that it's in the past tense, a pretty hideous mustache. And Kyle Guy all have joined the program so far. We've got one more guest in the show today. That would be Nick Yeoman of the INDYCAR Series. He is back from Toronto, and he will join us next. As you're listening to The Ride without JMV, Greg Rakestraw filling in, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Not all of them. 317-239-1070, the telephone number. At Greg Rakestraw on Twitter. Email the program to greg@1070thefan.com. John is back tomorrow, and for that, there is much rejoicing. Brian is up next. Nick Yeoman coming up in a matter of moments. Hello, Brian.
How you doing, Greg?
I'm good, sir. What do you have for us?
Well, and you may have already touched on this. I just got off work and got in the car, so I did hear the reference to the Legends home run derby, which I think is an awesome idea.
Correct.
I think that it would be very cool. But two things I really miss out of the All-Star games is the players wearing their own home and away uniforms.
Agreed.
I always thought that was so cool. And the second thing that I really miss, and I don't know how long it's been since they've done this, but they used to do an old-timers game prior to the All-Star games years ago, and it was old retired players that came out, and some of these guys were clearly nowhere near in ball shape.
They were in round shape is what they were then, yes.
Oh yeah, Walker shape almost.
Yep.
Some of them. But some of those games were so awesome just to see the old legends, the old timers that hadn't played in years. I think that would be so cool to start something like that up again too.
Well, potentially, Brian. Thanks for the phone call, buddy. I appreciate you. But let me jump in and say this. It kind of reminds me of the big three. Like if you're at home on a Sunday afternoon before you watch the PGA Tour, you can watch the 3-on-3 of the guys that used to play in the NBA. I thought the greatest line about that ever came from our former morning man, Michael Grady, now the voice of Minnesota Timberwolves, when he said, Cuttino Mobley out there looking like Cuttino Mobley's dad. I don't even think I need to see that. I remember those old time. I remember I remember one specifically because one of the guys who hit a home run has kind of made the rounds of Facebook, social media recently. Like, they used to play this game in D.C., the old National versus American, and some old dude hit in his 60s or 70s hit a home run, and that's cool. Then to watch him run around the bases. I remember the NBA did an old timers game, and dudes were blowing out knees, and I'm like, I don't think I need to see that. Remember the Manning family documentary on that ESPN will trot out from time to time, The Book of Manning. And they're showing Archie Manning playing in a game in 1990, in full pads at Ole Miss after he's retired. And I'm like, there's somebody may have a heart attack as they're chasing Arch. I'm like, I'm not trying to see that. But a home run derby where you're literally just standing at home plate and swinging for the fences. Okay, that you may have my interest in. I'm not asking you to beat a bunt down to first base. We don't have all day for that. But swinging, okay, now you got my attention. We will make a left or a right turn because it's, road and street circuits. This weekend, just left turns, no right turns for the IndyCar Series. And with that, we are joined by Nick Yeoman from the INDYCAR Radio Network. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Greg, I'm good. I hear you talking about old guys swinging for the fences, and all I think about is let's pray for some rotator cuff tears.
No, let's not do that because as I have heard, as I age, like the most painful surgery and rehab you could have would be of your rotator cuff. So I would not wish that on anybody at this point. How was Toronto this weekend?
It was great. It's always a fabulous city. Love visiting Toronto. They're so supportive of IndyCar racing. A couple years ago when the pandemic hit, you would talk about sports being affected in America. They felt it maybe just as hard up north, and we didn't do that race for a couple years. And you always worry, boy, you go away from a race for a couple years, will people come back? But the Toronto race fans are great. I know our entire crew enjoys it up there, and it was a really good race weekend there in the city of Toronto.
Our friend and colleague Jake Query always makes it a habit to bring Canadian-only products back through customs across the national line and then back to Indianapolis. Do you do the same?
No, Greg. I try not to. I don't want to get searched at customs. That's what I'm worried about. I try to pack as light as possible. Jake's always trying to sneak in those mints or some coffee. I try to avoid those practices.
All right, fair enough. We just had Christian Luundgard on the program in the last hour talking about his win. He said the mustache is now in the past tense. It was gone as of the flight home from Toronto last night. Your thoughts about him being a first-time winner in the IndyCar Series?
Yeah, I actually saw a video. They shaved it off in victory lane, so he got rid of that thing pretty darn quick after getting a win. It's a great story. I mean, Christian's a guy who has kind of been steadily coming along, and I think the thought process around him was, boy, he's pretty good. Is Rahal, Letterman, Lannigan holding him back a bit? Obviously, you know, and folks around Central Indiana know just how much that Rahal, Letterman, Lannigan team struggled in the month of May with Graham Rahal being bumped out of the Indy 500, and that organization needed to make some serious changes and make them pretty quick. They did that. Bobby Rahal and Mike Lannigan changed their approach up, and I think it's helped Christian Luundgard big time. I don't necessarily think, Greg, that the floodgates are about to open for Christian Luundgard. He's not going to all of a sudden start winning race after race, but now that he's got one, that confidence is there, not only in himself but in that team. I think he's going to be a serious contender to kind of mess with Alex Palou's chase for a championship here down the stretch of the IndyCar calendar.
You and I both tend to speak fluently in the language of snark and smartass, and so I can ask you this question. What happened to Alex Palou yesterday? He didn't win.
Yeah, no kidding, right? I mean, all he was trying to do is become the first IndyCar driver since 2006 to win a fourth straight race, and just the fifth to do it since 1970. And, boy, he let us all down by finishing second. The consolation prize was, how about a ninth straight top five finish? It was a pretty interesting day. For the first time, he was dealt a little bit of adversity, had to avoid a spinning Helio Castroneves at about the midway point of the race, and he slapped the wall and caught the front wing, and it bent the sucker, and he had to race for about the second half of the race with a bent front wing. Great pitch strategy. The team got him in and topped off on fuel before a lot of drivers did, so they got him ahead of them, and then Alex did an unbelievable job driving a broken car, Greg, to finish in second place. He extended his points lead, and guys like Joseph Newgarden and Scott Dixon have to be sitting here thinking, man, this guy finally gets dealt a bad hand, and he still extends the points lead. He's having really a miraculous season, something we haven't really seen since, we're looking at Juan Montoya and Alex Zanardi type levels of dominance, but he is living a charmed existence right now.
And obviously, so much of the story is going to be with seemingly, and I hate to say this, with still 2 months of the season left to go, it being almost in the past tense that he is going to win the IndyCar championship. So now the question, anytime talking about Palou, becomes, is he driving for Chip Ganassi next year? Is he driving for McLaren next year? Is he driving in Formula One next year? As you look into your crystal ball, and I know you've got some sources involved in this as well, exactly whom is his employer as of mid-September or beyond?
I think he's going to have some options in Formula One, Greg. I really do, and I don't think it's only going to be with Zach Brown's McLaren stable. That's kind of always been a thought process. Hey, McLaren's got teams in IndyCar and Formula One. You latch on to Alex Palou and promise him some opportunities to test in Formula One. And, hey, if it doesn't work out well, the worst thing you did is you stole Chip Ganassi's prime talent, and he's driving an IndyCar for you. But I think there's going to be some interest in some other Formula One teams for him as well, and there are going to be some very, very interesting discussions. And as it applies to the IndyCar series, Greg, in terms of the silly season stuff, I think everybody is waiting for this gigantic domino to fall with where does Alex Palou go? Because Mark James and I were talking about it this past weekend. We think half of the field could shake up and have drivers in new spots next year, and it all depends on Alex Palou. I can't make a prediction, Greg. I just know it's really good to be Alex Palou when you've got two IndyCar teams and maybe a couple Formula One teams knocking on your door. It's blank check season for the young Spaniard.
Again, Nick Yeoman, INDYCAR Radio Network, and IndyCar off in the summer kind of has a 1 week on, 1 week off philosophy. That is not the case this time around. You're heading out to Iowa for 2 races. First of all, knowing you're a Midwestern boy at heart, and I see you out enjoying a little dirt track action. You're not calling things for either IndyCar or PRN, etc. The Bullring Oval, back-to-back days. Your thoughts about being able to enjoy that this weekend?
Well, I love it because I am a Midwesterner, as you mentioned, and I'm excited. Kind of bummed I'm going to miss the start of USAC Indiana Sprint Week, but those short Bullring short tracks are really what I enjoy, and this is kind of one of the few opportunities IndyCar gets a chance to run on the high banks and the short oval of Iowa Speedway. It's great. Massive concerts. We're going to try to get Carrie Underwood up to the booth to sit with Mark James. I don't know if it's possible, but we're going to try to make it happen. But the action's always great there. It's just an incredible gem of a racetrack. It's in the middle of nowhere. Don't get it twisted. It is in the middle of nowhere in Newton, Iowa. You've got to stream through the corn to find the place. But it's a great racetrack. It puts on great racing. And Joseph Newgarden's got to be the guy that everybody looks at. He's led something like 7 million laps there over the last couple of years, Greg. He's been super dominant. But the action is always cool. It's like 27 Indy cars in a blender, and you hit puree. It's a fun racetrack, and I know everybody's looking forward to head to corn country.
Maybe my next question should be compare and contrast the I-80 truck stop versus Buc-ee's, but I will move on from that. As someone whom, obviously, you're paid by the series, you love what you do, you are a race nut, so as someone that would go for just the racing, your thoughts about kind of the show, the concerts versus just being out there for a race. How do you kind of balance those two as an IndyCar fan?
Yeah, I think if you're an IndyCar fan, you just have to accept that, man, these racetracks want to provide you the best bang for buck. And obviously, sure, there are going to be some folks there that probably have no interest in IndyCar racing, but you're hopeful that, hey, maybe they get exposed to it waiting for either one of these concerts to start, at the front end or back end on either day. Maybe they get exposed to something they enjoy and they become an IndyCar fan just like you. So I know the ticket prices went up and some fans weren't too thrilled about that, but this has become a marquee event. Iowa Speedway and the Hy-Vee supermarkets knocked it out of the park last year. And I think anytime you can take a regular feeling race weekend and turn it to a marquee event like they've done at Iowa Speedway, I think if you're an IndyCar fan, you got to be happy with it, even if it means that maybe the showcase isn't all about racing, but it's also about entertainment.
All right, how are your Panthers going to be this year, my friend?
Listen, if Bryce Young proves that, 5'4" quarterbacks don't get passes knocked down, I think they're going to be okay. That division's not very good, Greg. You look around the NFC South, I think 9 wins could get you in the playoffs. So I'm hopeful, decent defense. You know Frank Reich very well, changing the culture up a little bit, and if Bryce Young is decent, hey, maybe I got something to watch this fall.
There you go. Nick Yeoman on the INDYCAR Radio Network, and there is 2 this weekend, Saturday afternoon 3, Sunday afternoon 2, NBC for your television right here on 93.5 and 107.5, The Fan, and other great radio stations, not to mention Sirius XM, where you can check out all the work this weekend as well. Thanks, buddy. Enjoy the rest of your week, and safe travels to and from Iowa.
See you, Greg.
You got it. Nick Yeoman, kind enough to join us in the program. And as of now, and I don't think these developments will change, that's it from a guest standpoint. So you have an entire hour either to hear me do a monologue, and remember, I've been doing this for a long time and I'm an only child. I'm used to hearing the sound of my own voice. In all seriousness, how back in the day you'd have somebody would write in a bathroom in your high school or carve on the wooden desk for a good time call. My hand to God, my best friend carved in a desk for a good lecture and put my phone number on it. So I'd much rather have a conversation with you instead of a monologue. But if we got to go monologue, it can be done. 317-239-1070 is the telephone number. At Greg Rakestraw on Twitter. Email the program to greg@1070thefan.com. Our guests today have been great. Thank you, Grace Bahr of the Indy 11 women's team, who will play for their W League championship coming up on Saturday afternoon at 2. Tickets available, indy11.com, 317-685-1100. Thank you to Christian Luundgard, now no longer a mustache haver and now a race winner in the IndyCar series. Thank you to Nick Yeoman for continuing to talk about that. And thank you to Kyle Guy for joining us talking about the Dizzy Runs Pro-Am up in Noblesville. I'll talk about my friends at the City League coming up when I am doing the Fan Midday show on Wednesday. But the rest of this show is topics of your choice. Your phone calls when we come back. 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Going old school, classic Macho Man, and then backing it up with a little introduction music for CM Punk. Look at you. Again, things that James could not do if it was John in the seat today, knowing I would appreciate it. My name is Greg Rakestraw, and you are stuck with me for one more hour on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. I rattled off the guest list that we have had on the program today. The guest list is not going to change. All of our guests were able to join us during the 3 or 4 o'clock hour of the show, which means you get an hour of me and you talking about whatever you like. Now, John obviously has his Anything Goes segments. Has he been doing as many of these as of late? It seems to me I haven't heard as many of these. Maybe it's just me, like the times in which I am listening to the show. In other words, am I like ignoring like the end of the show by saying I've not been hearing Anything Goes as much?
We haven't done it a whole lot, I think, as recently.
Frankly, I would think that the summer is the time to do Anything Goes because there is less going on.
I know we've replayed segments and stuff like that.
I also know, and that's a common. In case you missed us early in the show, here you go. We've all been there at this point. But also, I know that's a thing that is often done at 6 o'clock. When you have a Pacers game to get to at 6:30, which clearly has not been the case over the course of the last 3 months. I have actually asked John in the past, hey, are you cool, if I do that on the program? I'm not going to do that on the program, but what I will do is say, listen, again, I'm happy to opine. I am happy to converse with myself. I have that skill set. I'll bring in James for conversation, but I would much rather talk to you as to what you would like to talk about. 317-239-1070, the telephone number, at Greg Rakestraw on Twitter. Email the program, greg@1070thefan.com. There are certain people, when I see their name on the call screener, I kind of have an idea as to A, not as who that person is, but B, what is it that they want to talk about? That is the case as I say hello to Darnell, who calls the show right now. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Hey, Greg, I told the producer, James, that you were my former boss in the early 2000s at 9:50.
I know. You look the same and I don't. I'm not sure how that works, Darnell.
No, I just wanted to say, hey, glad to hear you on the airways, and I just wanted to, if I could do a plug for tomorrow. We have a fundraiser. The Indy Thunder beat baseball team, which we're going to the World Series in a couple of weeks. So I just wanted to plug, if I could, the good people at Hoagies and Hops, and I think it's I don't want to get what's the pub?
Chili Water.
Chili Water is doing a fundraiser tomorrow from 11 to 9. 10% of the sales go to the Thunder. So if anybody's in the area, grab yourself some lunch or dinner or what have you, and go grab yourself a frosty beverage, and 10% of the proceeds go to the Thunder. So we're looking forward to going to the World Series in a couple of weeks to see if we can get back on track and bring home World Series number 6 out of 7. And when we know that you do a great deal with our organization and our team, we appreciate it, Greg. So like I said, I'll be catching up with you in a few days about getting some DVDs from you.
All right, so before I let you go, I know that you had some Indianapolis Indians players in the last couple of weeks get a little swings in with you, a little workout in with you. Tell me about that.
Oh, it was great. I mean, so Friday, last Friday, the 7th, we did about a 10-minute demonstration at Victory Field and about showing how beat baseball was played. And then Saturday, they bring over about 3 or 4 great guys from the Indians. Had actually about a 5-inning scrimmage because they went pretty quick because these guys are really, really good. They picked up the sport well, hitting, fielding, and base running. So, 3 of the Indians came and practiced at our facility, and they had a really, really good experience. I'll be putting some pictures later on out on Twitter and Facebook page so you guys can see the amazing hits and fielding they did with our team. It was just a great experience. And the Indians Charities is a great organization and a great program that helps our team and sponsors our organization and our team. So good stuff around, good partnership with the Indians.
Darnell, thanks for calling, buddy. I'll talk to you soon.
Appreciate it, Greg. Thanks.
My man, Darnell Booker. He had, obviously, you listen to like any of the shows, you'll hear Darnell's voice from time to time. Darnell has been a friend of mine for, again, well over 20 years. But he heads up the Indy Thunder Beat Baseball program. If you don't know what Beat Baseball is, it is baseball/softball for the blind and visually impaired. And I have been fortunate enough with Darnell. They have a regional event that is played at North Central High School every June. They bring in teams from across the country, and we've actually televised it on ISC. And it is remarkable what those athletes are able to do in terms of able to hit that ball, find a base 100 feet away that is making noise that they can't see, because you'll have a mixture of those that are partially sighted and those that are completely blind. But to put everybody on a level playing field, everybody has a full mask on. Everyone is 100% sight impaired as they are playing the game. And what those athletes can do in terms of tracking down a ball, collecting it, running down the base paths, timing out a swing, it is beyond belief. Darnell's team has won numerous world championships. They did not win last year. Another team from Indianapolis called the Indy Edge won that championship last year. So two of the best teams at this sport in the world are based here in Indianapolis. And so Darnell took advantage of said open phone lines to call in and plug his organization, of which I was happy to do so because I'm a big supporter of what they do. And you can go to ISC Sports Network. You can simply go to YouTube and type in Indy Thunder Beat Baseball, and you'll probably be able to see some of the telecasts and broadcasts that we have done, and what that group does is remarkable. Not the fact that before the All-Star break last week for the Indianapolis Indians, they're off today. They're back on the road this week. They are back at home at Victory Field on July 25th. I thought it was really cool that they brought some players over so they could experience this. And, you know, we talked in the last hour of the show about having a Legends home run derby. As far as like old dude sports, I think that's probably like to cap it. We had another phone caller that wanted to say, let's bring back the old timers game. No, I'm not sure I need to be seeing that. But old guys swinging a bat for home runs, see if they can still clear the fence, I'm into that. But I bring that conversation up in conjunction with Darnell because I have told him, I said, what you need to do is have like a celebrity game, get dopes like me and other media types or anybody that wants to take, part that has a camera, has a microphone, has a significant social media following to get more word about your organization. Put us out there in blindfolds and see how we would do. And so I will continue to kind of plant that seed with Darnell, and hopefully before next year he does his Beat Ball Bonanza regional event in early June, we might have a little celebrity beat ball game. And I'm sure I'll make a complete and total clown of myself if I play, because what those folks do is remarkably challenging. Randy has taken up the open challenge to yap with me for a couple of minutes. Hello, Randy. How are you?
Hey, brother, it's Randy from the South Side, local insurance agent, and I see a lot of people in my office that have a lot of great charities that support. And you're right, I've seen beat ball before. It's unbelievable. I mean, you take away, someone's ability to see,
right,
and yet they still find a way to play a very competitive sport. It's a wonderful thing.
Yep, very much so.
And what I want to talk about is the Indy 11. I mean, it seems like they can't win at home. They play better on the road. That's got to be coaching.
I don't think it's coaching, Randy. I think it's just kind of some misfortune. And I hope that a little time away, because the guys played on Wednesday and then basically are not going to play again until Saturday. And I think the guys kind of scattered to the four winds for 3 or 4 days. I think that's the best thing that could have happened. I think they just kind of need to separate for a little bit, hit the reset button. There's talent here. Why it's not clicking, I'm not exactly quite sure. Indy 11 have won 5 times this season. Yes, 4 of them have been away from home. I'm not sure what the problem has been here. I wish I had an answer for you. I guarantee you Mark Lowry wish he had an answer for it. I don't think it's coaching.
Think of this, buddy, is that what killed me is the goaltending snafu. That was ridiculous on Saturday. You just missed timing the ball. And we had a couple of goals last year. Back to your goaltender, he wasn't there. I mean, it went in the net. So, yeah, it needs to get better.
I hope so. Randy, thanks for the phone call, pal. I appreciate it. James, how many Indy 11 phone calls do you get on a regular basis on this program?
Generally none.
Not many. So we expand the purview of this show when I am here. I would like to hear John respond to that caller tomorrow, by the way. See, huh? What? Randy, thank you. And the Indy 11 men do play Saturday night, 7 o'clock. You can catch that on WRTV, Channel 6, part of an Indy 11 doubleheader that I have the privilege of calling on a couple of different channels/network from Carroll Stadium this Saturday. Bill wants to talk blue chips. Now, I am very fluent in blue chips, by the way. Hello, Bill. How are you?
Greg, I'm doing great. I just got finished watching Blue Chips. I hadn't seen it in years.
Bill, let me jump in here real quick. I believe the 30th anniversary of the filming of Blue Chips was like a few weeks ago because it would happen before the NBA draft because that's the reason why the Magic wanted to get, Penny Hardaway because Shaq kept telling, hey, go get Penny Hardaway because we played together in Blue Chips. So much like Ken Griffey Jr. being 53 ages us all, thinking that movie was filmed 30 years ago should age us all. Now the floor is yours. Please continue.
Yeah, that's interesting bit of information there. And I just wanted to get your opinion on one thing. Kind of when you look back at that movie, if they had NIL back then, and obviously it's a movie, what's your thoughts on that? And also, the greatest trivia question in the world, who got the music credits for the movie Blue Chips, whom also used to be in the legendary British blues band the Yardbirds?
You're gonna beat me on this one, Bill. So who gets the music credits for Blue Chips?
Jeff Beck.
Ah, very nice.
The
Okay.
one and only Jeff Beck, but also in the movie, and I'll get off here. But if you look at Shaquille, I think Shaquille O'Neal did a pretty good job in that movie.
Oh,
he was just himself, but he was pretty enticing.
Well, clearly, a lot of neon Boudreaux, would be construed as Shaquille O'Neal. Yes, he channeled himself, but it was a sign, and Bill, thanks for the phone call. It was a sign of the pitch man that Shaq would become with what he did in that movie 30 years ago. You got to remember that, and I've never seen the movie. I don't think I need to go back and watch Kazam anytime soon. But the fact that somebody after their rookie year in the NBA gets to be in a featured movie, albeit not a great movie, but still they made a major motion picture in which he was involved in more than a cameo role is impressive. I mean, having an athlete play another athlete, not exactly much of a stretch. But yes, there was a little bit of acting in there for Shaq. There was a little bit of acting in there for Penny Hardaway. A little bit of acting in there for Matt Nover. Of course, this is the only state where, for some reason, we could have a random conversation about Blue Chips since it was, filmed in Frankfurt when it wasn't filmed in Los Angeles. But it's also the only place where, if somebody brings up Blue Chips in 49 states, it's just basketball. In 49 states, it's, hey, Shaq and Penny and that white dude were the three players they focused on. Indiana, we go, hey, it's Shaquille O'Neal, Penny Hardaway, and Matt Nover, as Ricky Rowe. We have those things right off the top of our head. But a friend of mine, in fact, my boss at the day job, was one of the extras in Blue Chips because he grew up around the Frankfurt area. And so he just happened to be having this conversation with me last Monday, saying that he made it a point to introduce himself and shake the hand of Ed O'Neill, who obviously was the reporter in the movie Blue Chips. So we were just, in my life, it's why I was, Bill, happy that you called, just randomly happened to have a conversation about Blue Chips. And I saw this, I think, on the Indiana High School basketball fans Facebook page in the last couple of weeks. Somebody put they charged admission to go watch the games in Blue Chips. $3, but you had to have a ticket to get in because what they basically did is they played games and they just scripted the lob to win, the very end of that game. That part was scripted. The rest, they just played and then filmed it and then kind of intersperse that in terms of the script of the movie. But the other thing that I would there and I think I like, because of the way my memory works, like now because of GIFs and memes and things like that, seemingly we all have instant recall of these quotes from movies or television shows, whatever, because of social media. The way that my brain works, I kind of always I had like that clip art in my head. And if there are two movies from the 90s that I probably quote more than anything else or immediately pop into my mind, believe it or not, Blue Chips is one of them. And we used to, and I don't think they still do it, there used to be this promotion here with the station with College Choice 529. And we give away like scholarship money every summer as somebody was going off to college. And we used to have and this was really loosely themed, we used to have this soundbite we would play from a different movie that had some sort of college tie. And we would play one from Blue Chips, and it reminded me about this line from Pete Bell. You might know him as Nick Nolte. When basically in his press conference, as he's kind of melting down about the cheating that had been going on at Woo WU, Western University, the Mighty Dolphins that played their home games at Case Arena in Frankfurt, when he basically goes, it's about the money. It's about the blankety blank money. And that applies to so much in life. If there's two movie clips from the 90s that I would say even I live my life by, one of them is that line right there. It's about the money. It's about the GD money. The other one would be Tommy Lee Jones from The Fugitive when Harrison Ford, as Dr. Richard Kimball, goes, I didn't kill my wife. And Tommy Lee Jones with his hands up says, I don't care. Like I could literally rotate those two. Like I could go through a lengthy conversation just alternating those two answers. It's about the money, and I don't care. And that would get me through a lot of what I do on a day-to-day basis. On that note, we'll take this quick time out. When we come back, more of the same. So let's recap, shall we? This segment, we talked about Beat Ball, the Indy 11, and Blue Chips. That's my kind of open. It's like a Mad Lib on the radio. It's my kind of open phone line segment. Let's do that again, shall we? 317-239-1070, at Greg Rakestraw on Twitter, or email the show, greg@1070thefan.com. If you can't find something better to do, come on back. We're back after this on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. What musical theme are you leading me now into? I am not able to deduce this, and people that are watching on the stream would see my follically challenged head not wearing headphones. So what am I missing here, James?
This is Lionel Richie's Dancing on the Ceiling.
Dancing on the Ceiling. Any particular reason why we're dancing on the ceiling, or you're just having that good of a time hanging out with me?
I'm just having a
You're
blast.
Just enjoying life.
Absolutely.
Very good. I appreciate it. I didn't know if there was a specific movie reference that I just completely biffed in terms of listening to that.
Oh, no, just like Lionel Richie.
Just enjoy you some Lionel Richie on a Monday. God bless you. Greg Rakestraw in for JMV. It's The Ride on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. And again, I have no problem admitting to you that we're kind of in that holding pattern, or we're kind of playing that waiting game. We're not playing a wicked game with Chris Isaac. We're not playing the crying game either. We're kind of playing that waiting game. Not necessarily waiting on the world to change, but waiting. I won't say on the world to change again, just kind of waiting for that level of pause. But Colts training camp is 8 days away. Move-in day is next Tuesday. They'll get the workouts going the following day. Just will be a little while before they kind of hit the pads and get running. But all things Indianapolis Colts start to dominate the airwaves as of next week. And I'm happy to have a Colts conversation with you now if you'd like at 317-239-1070 or on Twitter at Greg Rakestraw or via email at greg@1070thefan.com. We're kind of waiting on that. The Indiana Pacers, hey, listen, because of the draft, because of free agency, because of the Summer League, we talk a lot of blue and gold in June and July. But now we have finally truly hit that off season, both from the Pacers, but the larger NBA perspective. There are still deals out there to make in terms of exactly where Damian Lillard is going to be. We all think Miami is a done deal, but I'm pretty sure that's not official just yet. And there are other corresponding player moves that need to take place. But as it relates to the Indiana Pacers, there is still this expectation. Could be a major move. Maybe it's not. But there's still a roster move or two that is out there to be made. But we're kind of waiting on the Pacers to make that move. And there's also, no real pressure. Maybe that takes place tomorrow. Maybe that takes place the end of September. Maybe that takes place during training camp. You don't really know. Free agency moves, largely considered good ones that were made, 2 or 3 weeks ago. The draft, we're not talking about, 3-4 weeks ago at this point. So we're kind of waiting on that too. The Reds have been obviously a big topic of conversation. Well, because I'm not saying the Reds are the dominant baseball interest in this town. The Reds and Cubs, and then you kind of secondarily get to White Sox, Cardinals, and whomever your favorite team might be. But if the Reds or Cubs are good, if we're going to talk about Major League Baseball, it's probably going to be because one of those two teams are pretty good. And the Reds were great for the span of about 4 or 5 weeks. And I'm not saying they're trash now, but maybe we've dialed back that fervor just a little bit. Because they were just swept at home by the Brewers and relinquished first place. But by those that follow the Reds on even a more regular basis than I do at this juncture of my life, people have said, listen, you've seen Ellie De La Cruz, and he's been transformative. I mean, crowds went from witness protection program to I can't get a ticket. Thankfully, I'm going to go on Thursday and look forward to seeing him in action for the first time at Great American Ballpark. But here's the other example I'll give you in terms of the impact that Ellie De La Cruz has had, not just on the Reds, but in baseball in general. I just spent the last 2 days doing a youth baseball tournament that we at ISC have done for the last several years called the Greater Lafayette World Series. There are players, 14U, 15U, 16U, 17U, players from across the state of Indiana that play in that event. Teams that come in from Michigan, Illinois. There was a team from Mexico that played in that event. And as part of doing those games on TV, we sent out a questionnaire to players, so we have a little something to talk about. Most of them we can, especially the older kids, I can pretty much find, hey, this is where this guy played high school baseball. Here were his stats, et cetera. We also ask him, hey, who's your favorite team? Hey, what are your college plans? What are you thinking about doing? Favorite athlete and something else other than baseball? Yada, yada, yada. But the stat that I tend to, or the biographical information I tend to hammer home, it'll always be, hey, so-and-so says he's a Reds fan, or so-and-so says he's a Cubs fan, and here is his favorite player. You're going to hear me type because, I'm a serial typer to look this up. But Elly De La Cruz made his debut with the Reds June 6th. So he has been in the majors now for 41 days. Okay? Think about the impact he's had on the Reds in terms of their attendance, in terms of their spot in the standings. But more than a handful of the players that I talked about over the course of the last couple of days said, who is your favorite major league player? And the answer was Elly De La Cruz. And he's been in the bigs for less than 6 weeks. That's crazy. Part of it is our short attention span in life, and part of it is the jaw-dropping things he has done already at this stage in terms of hitting for the cycle, in terms of stealing home plate, in terms of stealing 3 bases basically in 2 pitches. Again, what he has done has not been stat-driven. It's been, oh my God, look at that moment-driven, which has been so cool. But apparently, there's even more talent coming in behind him. So the next big thing in Cincinnati, Christian Encarnacion Strand, officially called up. Not sure. I haven't seen the Reds lineup. Maybe he's in the lineup. Don't know. But the Reds' number 5 prospect now joins Elly De La Cruz and Matt McLain as the kind of guys that are thought to be the key future components of the team. And I don't have this stat in front of me. I believe now that the Reds have had 16 players make their MLB debut this year. And normally you say something like that when your team is like the Oakland A's, when you're literally playing yourself into another market. Not when you're 6 games above 500 and potentially in contention for first or a wild card spot. By the way, the Reds are 2 games back of first, and in terms of a wild card position, they're basically about the same. So while they've lost their last 4, and while they were swept coming out of the All-Star break, all is not lost as a Reds fan. And the Giants, in which they are starting a 4-game set with tonight, are another team in which they could be battling for a wild card spot if they don't or aren't able to catch the Brewers. And by the way, there's still 68 games left to go. And to the Reds' credit, they have said, yes, we are still building with young pieces, but yes, we'd like to be able to get those guys some playoff experience while we have the opportunity. And so the Reds are still being very indicative that they will be potential buyers at the trade deadline, which I think is a wonderful thing. And apparently, by those that follow the team, again, closer than I do these days, there's an additional wave of minor league talent available where they could be potentially dealing some younger minor league prospects, knowing they've already got a team full of prospects that it's on the major league team right now. So if you want to talk a little Reds, because I haven't really talked Reds on the program today, you can do that as well. The phone lines still remain open to you at 317-239-1070. Hit me up on Twitter at Greg Rakestraw, or you can even old school email the program if you would like. Greg at 1070thefan.com. Thank you, Jason, for tweeting to me when I said, I know Encarnacion Strand is on the roster. I don't know if he's in the lineup. By God, he's in the lineup. Thank you, Jason, for sending that my way. He'll be hitting 6th. Elly De La Cruz leads off. I love saying that. McLain hits 3rd. India, not a rookie. And it's amazing to think that the Reds, there has been talk about, do they have to move India, who was like their prospect, like last year, to make room for other guys? He's like the old veteran. Oh, and by the way, I had this conversation last week when I was doing the midday show. We had Mo Egger on the show, and Mo, of course, does a great job. Is literally on right now on ESPN 1530 in Cincinnati. And the contract of Joey Votto, I think, expires. The team basically has an option for $20 million next year, but it's not a player option. It is a team option for next year. I'm literally pulling this up to make sure I'm saying this correctly. That is correct. He turns 40 next year. Club has an option, not player, to keep him for $20 million. And obviously, Votto can, well, let's face it, Joey Votto still bangs, right? That's what we talked about. It's how you say it on social media, and it's very accurate. Look at what he has been doing. There is obviously the personality that he is. There is what he has meant to the team, and it would not surprise me, knowing and again, are the Reds a little frugal at times? Yeah. It's the nature of being a smaller market team in Major League Baseball. And there's been some that have thought, hey, maybe the Reds bring him back for a lower number. Given how young the Reds are, you can frankly kind of afford to pay Joey for 1 year, almost as kind of a send-off contract. That instead of having to go through this negotiation period of saying, hey, we love you, but only this much, you can simply say, hey, we're going to pick up your option. He'll be making a little bit less than he did this year, but you're not having to pay hardly anybody else on that team big money. You will at some point in time, but not right now. Let's say you don't bring Votto back on $20 million for that 1 year, knowing you're paying everybody else pennies on the dollar, especially for some of those guys for what they might earn in the future. By the way, it helps if I could count. Encarnacion Strand is 7th in the lineup, not 6th. My apologies. So a little Reds conversation, we can do that too. Whatever the listen, if I can do a segment on beat ball, Indy 11, and blue chips, we can talk about whatever in sports you would like to talk about. 317-239-1070, at Greg Rakestraw on Twitter. Email the show, greg@1070thefan.com. Your phone calls, your tweets, your emails to wrap up the show next. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
JMV here for my friends, John and Chris Love at Love Heating and Air Conditioning. It's hot and you need to make sure that your air conditioner is
Monty Python references on the show. I'm not sure that's John's thing. That is more kind of my level of shtick. And while that's from the early 70s, I was introduced to that during my high school formative years, like summer of 1992. In fact, I literally just booked like a friend's weekend getaway. I got us like a condo here in downtown Indy coming up for a couple of weekends, and I'm sure there will be much rejoicing, also a Monty Python reference, when we all get together, and perhaps the Holy Hand Grenade of Antioch might be mentioned as part of that. Mike would like to steer the conversation back to baseball, and for that, it's probably much rejoicing. Hello, Mike. How are you?
This is actually Macho Mike.
Now, Macho, you will get a kick out of this. Hello, Michael. With the anniversary of Victory Field being 27 years old last Tuesday, you know what I put on Twitter and I uncovered, Macho Mike?
YMCA?
I uncovered a video of you from the first night of Victory Field dancing to the YMCA.
Did it look good?
It looked magnificent, Mike.
Guess what?
What?
I did a week ago Wednesday on Teresa's birthday. I pointed up to heaven. I threw out the first pitch at the Indians game.
Very cool.
And then last week ago Sunday, I pointed up to heaven at the Gainbridge Fieldhouse, and I danced at the Fever game.
Very nice. What are you going to do to celebrate this week, Mike?
This week, I'm going to just celebrate life and special people like you.
Well, thank you.
You're one of my favorites and everything. Oh, Angel sends you a hug.
Well, I appreciate that. Anything else to discuss with you this evening, buddy?
Real quick, yell, hi, Angel.
Hi, Angel.
I know she's wagging her tail for you. And God bless you, Greg. You're great, and take care. And unfortunately, my team is lousy this year.
And your team is?
Cardinals.
Well, I won't hold that against you, Mike. Thank you. Again, I still am not sure whether I'm more excited about the Reds winning or the Cardinals being in last place. It's neck and neck. It's what keeps me going when the the Reds are losing. I still look at the standings and the Cardinals are struggling, and that just makes me smile. 317-239-1070, the telephone number, at Greg Rakestraw on Twitter. You can always email me too, Greg at 1070thefan.com. And yes, last Tuesday was the 27th birthday of Victory Field. And we, as in the day job for me, as in the ISC Sports Network, we are lucky enough now to produce Indianapolis Indians home games as part of the Bally Sports Live app and MILB TV. And we have access to like the video archives. So 3 weeks ago, we came across just kind of like almost like in somewhere in storage on somebody's hard drive someplace. We came across these files of the opening day of Victory Field. And it was this wonderful time capsule of what we all look back in 1996. And fashion sense was some degree in question back then. We also had like this random, and we didn't put this on social media, but those of us in the ISC office got a kick out of it. There was this couple that was in front of the camera that thought, you know what? The best way to celebrate the opening of Victory Field is for you to get a close shot of us making out. We didn't put that was strictly for the office Christmas party. That we did not put that on social media. But I'm like, guys, are we seeing? You guys seeing it? Yeah, we're watching this. Okay, all right. Well, apparently that was the way to celebrate the debut of Victory Field. I'm glad they enjoyed themselves back on July 11th of 1996. And if there is a 26-and-a-half-year-old out there named Victor, you may have been the result of that evening at Victory Field. Perhaps that's the way that things played out. But yes, we would not have been able to put that video out if we did not include Macho Mike Sullivan dancing on top of the Indianapolis Indians dugout and enjoying a little YMCA. 317-239-1070, at Greg Rakestraw on Twitter. Email the program to Greg at 1070thefan.com. In case you want to go back and listen to this show again in podcast form, you can. 1075thefan.com. I think our interview with Christian Luundgard, I have been told by the suits in charge, and by the suits in charge, I mean Eddie Garrison, who never wears a suit, that the Luundgard interview is going to be on instant replay coming up in the next hour of the show. But Christian was one of 4 guests to be on the show today. He and Nick Yeoman both talking all things IndyCar. IndyCar guys are back in action in Iowa for 2 races this weekend, Saturday afternoon, Sunday afternoon. Hear both of those here on the Fan. We had Grace Bahr on the program, and if I stopped right there, you'd go, who's Grace Bahr? Well, Grace Bahr is one of the members of the Indy 11 women's soccer team who will play for their W League championship coming up on Saturday afternoon. I'll be doing the midday show Wednesday. I'm sure we'll talk about it then, but get your tickets. Grand Park has been more full than not to watch the Indy 11 women's team. Grand Park filling up takes about 2,000 people. Filling up Carroll Stadium will take about 10,000 people. There was an Indy 11 women's match last year against Detroit City, which would have been like the second Saturday in July, and had a great crowd, had about 4,000 or 5,000 there. But if you happen to be a soccer dad, or simply put, you happen to be the parent of a daughter who wants to potentially play a high school sport, a college sport, maybe even dreams to play professionally. She wants to play, man. And again, you've got the U.S. women's national team, the two-time defending World Cup champions, who will open up their title defense on Friday night at 9 o'clock against Vietnam. Then they'll play the Netherlands and Portugal to round up the group stage over the course of the next 8 or 9 days or so. But if you're like, all right, I've got a kid that's thinking about whether it's playing soccer or playing a sport, this is a wonderful chance to kind of plant that seed in their minds. All right, hey, this is one of the steps you take to be able to do that. Indy 11 women's team has players that have played in Spain, the NWSL, the Netherlands, I think Sweden would be amongst that group. But they have several former pros that are on the team that are back here in Indianapolis. And as I said earlier, just thinking out loud about the starting 11, the local high schools represented of those that play, in no particular order: Carmel, Triton Central, Delta, Noblesville, I think that counts for 2 of the players, Zionsville, I'm probably forgetting a player or 2 in terms of the local players. But then you've got players that have played at Butler, players that have played at Purdue, kind of expanded through the Midwest. You've got Xavier and the University of Louisville, very well represented. It is a very high level of soccer. It is a great way to showcase potentially being a professional athlete, again, to your daughter, but you don't have to be a girl dad to enjoy it. You can simply be a sports fan. They're really good. Lord knows I try to be 2 places at once, and through the magic of audio tape, often I am. Not today. I'm live. If you're watching, I'm really here. It's almost 5:48 on a Monday afternoon. I'm in vivo right now. But there are times when I'm not, because I'm off doing something else. I could not be in 2 places at one time on Friday night. So I did the IFCA North-South All-Star Game at Decatur Central. So I couldn't be at Grand Park to watch the Indy 11 play. Ian Gilmore did a great job of filling in for me, by the way. But as I am broadcasting the IFCA North-South All-Star Game, I literally have all of my stats laid out in front of me. And I've got my phone with the Indy 11 women's game kind of like on off to the side. I don't think it distracted me from the play-by-play, but there might have been a few confusing fist bumps or fist pumps for Lance Scheib as I'm reacting to the Indy 11 scoring a goal. That match was phenomenal. Indy scored, San Francisco answered. Indy scored, San Francisco answered. And I knew I was going to leave out of high school. The rebuff Jesuit grad that won the match for the Indy 11, Aaliyah Martin, who played, again, professionally and played at the University of Michigan. That came with a minute left to go. It was an amazing match. I hope the final is anywhere close to as good and as interesting and as competitive as that match was on Friday night. So I realize for some, when I'm doing this, soccer's not your thing, and that's okay. I'm not the person that gets offended when somebody says, "Hey, man, I love you when you do X, Y, and Z, but not soccer." It's okay. It's not for everybody, all right? But in a time, there's maybe a little bit less going on locally in sports, And in a time when women's sports and women's soccer is going to be something that is on your television screen a lot and talked about a lot over the course of the next month, here is a wonderful chance to see the game played at an exceedingly high level locally. So hope to see a packed Carroll Stadium Saturday afternoon. One more time for this show, the ticket plug, 317-685-1100 or Indy11.com for more information. So Grace Bahr joined us in the program, and Kyle Guy joined us on the show as well. James, anything that I have missed, that I have been delinquent in my duties in terms of talking about on the program today? Because I think, again, like I said, I use the example of the first segment of this hour. If we can go from beat ball to Indy 11 to blue chips in one segment, I think we have gone the old ABC Wild World of Sports. I think we have spanned the globe. But is there something I have neglected through 2 hours and 50 minutes of the show so far?
I really can't think of anything, especially at this point of the year right now, since we're kind of waiting on the Colts and Pacers are done with the Summer League. I mean, I think we've pretty much covered all the bases. In other
words, what you're telling me is you understand why John took the day off today.
Yes, I am.
This was a day to hand the baton off to somebody else and say, hey, listen, you fill 3 hours. I'm going to go do something else. Now, what John would have done on his day off, I'm not sure. John doesn't really golf all that much.
May have mowed his yard.
That would have been, and probably shirtless.
Yeah.
That would have been the pick to click, to use the old Hawk Harrelson line. That was my even money favorite. Mm-hmm. That there was acres of yard mowing from a shirtless JMV down on the Morgan-Johnson County line. That was what was going on the far south side. That was the social event close to Mallow Run Winery of today. John will be back tomorrow, and I'm sure you will all be exceedingly happy about that. Still time for a phone call, for a tweet, or an email if you want to join the conversation. 317-239-1070. Greg at 1070thefan.com. Hit me up on Twitter at Greg Rakestraw. Because I'll be honest with you, too. This is kind of like I'm not getting away, so to speak. This is kind of my last chance to take a breather before it gets, even crazy for me. And I've talked about this in kind of a couple different venues, methods, etc. But I often talk about the start of what used to be that the Brickyard would be around here. And the Brickyard obviously has changed so many dates over the course of the year. But it used to be around this time on a more consistent basis. And it used to be around this time where we had the RCA championships, or then the Indianapolis tennis championships. And I joked that was the start of the sports fiscal calendar. That once that happened, then it was, all the way down in terms of, after that, this happens, after that, this happens, et cetera, et cetera. Well, now that event really is the start of Colts training camp. And move-in day, that is 7 days from tomorrow. Because then once that happens, you just kind of start checking boxes quickly. You have a week of training camp. And then at the end of week number 2, you play a game. And the next week, it's game number 2. But that same weekend, it's the start of the high school football season. And now the next week, it is week number 3. And then after that, it's Labor Day weekend and it's college football season. And then it's here. So it might seem like a slow period now as the introductory theme to championship wrestling. If you grew up in Southern Indiana, Memphis wrestling is known nationally. Like, I expect to hear Lance Russell and Dave Brown when I hear this music. Sean Ash, that's what we're going as, by the way, for Halloween this year, just so you know. But when you hear this, it means it's time to wrap it up on this program. My job has been done. I have filled enough airtime. Thank you very much. It's going to get busy again soon. John is back tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. Thanks for putting up with the substitute teacher on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.